you, right?
Yes, or whatever's easiest.
Yeah.
This is Charlie Parsons for the Stomping Ground, powered by Wow Hydrate and available on DAZN. Ariel Helwani.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Wow.
What a quirky little backdrop we've got, by the way.
First of all, I love this backdrop. It's great to be on the Stomping Ground. Is this my Stomping Ground debut?
It is, which is crazy to think, right?
Listen, I'm not going to say what I really want to say, but it's
Say what you got to say.
No, it's disrespectful. I mean, I pretty much built the other platform you were on, and now how old is Stomping Ground?
How old is the Stomping Ground? We launched in March.
All right,
so we're in our infancy, six months.
This is not infancy. You're a full-grown child at this point, and this is the first time you've asked me to come on, which is crazy. And you had to, not only that, he had to ask a PR person to ask me. He couldn't even ask himself. The cheek, the bloody cheek on this kid.
I will.
What do I make of that?
That's liberties. You should just cut this interview off immediately.
No, listen, I'm happy to do it. I just, I see you talking to every jabroni under the sun, and I'm like, when do I get the call? I mean, you literally talk to Eddie Hearn like 4 times a day. 4 times a day. Who needs that?
I'm honoured that you want to be on the Stomping Ground.
Listen, I didn't say I want to. I was just wondering if you were going to ask. I was happy to turn it down. But, when Fred of DAZN calls, I have to say yes.
The worst thing is the comments of the people will think that is the actual sole reason, and I hope for our friendship that it's not. No, you know what it is, Ariel? As much as we do stuff in Zoom, I've not seen you in the UK or anywhere, actually, I think, since we've launched.
Since you've launched? Yeah, maybe. I mean, I feel like I've been to a few fights since then, but maybe not the same ones as you. But it's fine. Listen. But by the way,
we may have had a brief catch-up, actually, Joshua and Garner.
I was there. Yeah. That was
our first week in the game.
What a way to start, but that's fine. Listen, it seems like everything's going well. Expanding into other ventures, other sports, other platforms. You're smashing it. Sometimes it takes like 25 minutes to get into the real meat and potatoes of the conversation, especially when you're speaking to, Eddie and whatnot. I'm like, okay, guys, can we hurry? You're talking about your trainers. You're talking about your tracksuit. You're talking about I watch everything. Just so you know. But that's just me nitpicking, It's different strokes for different folks.
Of course, and I've always sort of said that there are lots of outlets, as you would have seen yesterday and experienced that yesterday. If people don't like the way we have our discussion before the interview, no one's making them watch, 1. And 2, you can always skip that, right? I try to maybe give to like the casual fan as well, who maybe doesn't know Eddie in boxing. No, I'm just telling you as a friend, almost as if the camera isn't here.
Of course. As you like to say here, I'm taking the piss.
I know.
Yes. So that's your style. That's what you're known for. So it's brilliant, and you get a lot of great stuff, a lot of great access, and by doing that, it leads to other great stuff. So no, you don't have to explain yourself. At least not to me.
Well, no, I look up to you, Ariel. So regardless of taking the piss or not, I will always do that. How's life treating you? It's been a minute, I say, since we've caught up. You are killing it, as always. I feel like you're in a different place every week, as well as being in the studio back home and constantly being out live. Are you happy with where Ariel Helwani is in the world at the minute?
That is a very thoughtful and deep question. I appreciate it. Yes, it's been a very interesting and very exciting and fun last few months for me. In July, I was at the Olympics, covering the Olympics in Paris for the CBC, which is the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, so our version of the BBC, which was a huge deal for me personally as a proud Canadian. That was unbelievable. And then shortly thereafter, I made a big jump, partnering with Yahoo Sports, starting my own venture, the Ariel Helwani Show, Uncrowned, compiling, I think, the best journalists in combat sports. We're not just covering MMA, we're covering MMA, boxing, and pro wrestling, which is very exciting to me. My show is relaunching in October. We're building a new studio at the Yahoo headquarters as we speak. A lot of my friends are coming with me. I'm so incredibly, this is the biggest, I think, moment of my career. And in addition to that, we're launching other shows under the network as well. We've got The Crack with Pete Carroll, the MMA Focus show. He's based in Ireland. Last week we announced a new show with Ade and I, Ade Oladipo, in partnership with DAZN and Uncrowned, the Ariel and Ade show, which will air every Tuesday. We just had our first episode on Thursday. There's other things and other announcements coming as well. So I'm over the moon. I'm delighted, and I can't wait to really get going once everything is up and running in October.
Well, congratulations to you on that, and I hope everything continues to run as smoothly as you can. And I know firsthand just how busy, and there's probably not enough hours in the day to do it, so I'm sure you'll get there. Joshua-Dubois, big fight week feel, maximum capacity for Wembley Stadium, 96,000. AJ fight weeks are always special. I mean, you only look around, and especially this week with some of the venues. Yesterday's press conference was incredible. It's always big. And it is again this time.
It feels gigantic. The Saturday night event will be the biggest fight card that I've ever attended live. The biggest prior to this was 56,000 in Melbourne, Australia. UFC 193, Ronda Rousey against Holly Holm. So this is a big jump, almost double the amount of people. And I've watched all the Wembley fights. I've watched him at Wembley, Tottenham Hotspur, Tyson Fury, etc. And so to finally witness one of these and work on the broadcast is an incredible honor, a dream come true, really. I've always really appreciated AJ. I've said this now a few times this week. I felt like the British public have been a little too hard on him. They don't give him the same leeway as they give other athletes who hail from this country, and I've never quite understood it. I don't think he's ever done anything to embarrass the country. I think he's flown the flag. He won a gold medal here in London in 2012, and on it goes. He's had to reinvent himself, and who could have imagined 2 years ago when he's in the ring in Saudi Arabia after losing to Oleksandr Usyk, essentially chucking the belts out of the ring, crying on the dais next to Eddie Hearn, that we'd be here 2 years later on the verge of another heavyweight title, on a 4-fight winning streak, and also on the verge of a potential showdown for undisputed gold against either Usyk again for the third time, or finally Tyson Fury. It's unbelievable the way he's reinvented himself, and I've found him to be so fascinating all week. Grateful, introspective, very switched on, down to earth. There's a ton of chaos happening around him, and he seems locked in. So it's a wonderful story, and I can't wait to witness it. And on the flip side, you have him going up against a fellow Brit in Daniel Dubois, who's another guy who I think has been unfairly criticized at times. I think the reaction to his loss to Joe Joyce was extremely unfair. He broke his orbital. What do you want the guy to do? And even the way the Usyk fight ended, I thought was unfair. That's Oleksandr Usyk, and he almost had a moment there where maybe he dropped him. In the end, it wasn't considered that, but I thought he performed very well. And so to say that this guy doesn't have heart, he doesn't have will, he doesn't have determination, I think is silly. It's England versus England. To me, it's the biggest British heavyweight fight since Lennox Lewis, Frank Bruno, and I've heard about that. I wasn't there, obviously. I watched it, and I love the stories about it. Now to witness something like this is pretty damn special, and it could be on the verge of arguably one of the biggest heavyweight fights ever, and certainly the biggest British clash, and that's the one we all want, Tyson versus AJ.
Something that I've been using in my narrative in interviews this week is the respect from the British public towards Daniel Dubois. And I say that about the media as well, actually. He has never had this much respect going into a fight, like you mentioned, off the back of the Joe Joyce defeat, the quitting talk. Yeah. There was always talk around the Oleksandr Usyk fight as well. This is almost, like I say, the most respect he's ever had going into a fight. And also the dynamic is, and I saw someone mention this yesterday, when you have someone like Daniel Dubois, who I don't want to say isn't coherent, but like when it comes to press conferences and stuff like that, he's not going to speak vocally. AJ could say anything, he's not said too much, but it's almost like impossible to get under someone's skin who doesn't really, like, I don't want to say understand it, but doesn't care for it as such, right?
I think sometimes his demeanor is misunderstood. I think he's just a reserved, shy person. I don't think that means he doesn't understand or he doesn't get it or he's not, on the same level as someone else as far as his intelligence. I just think he's shy and reserved. And maybe there's a socially awkward component to him, but that doesn't take away from his fighting skills. And, about 13 months ago, he fought Usyk in Poland, And there was a sentiment, I think, going into that fight that he didn't belong, that he wasn't on Usyk's level. And I think after the fight, despite the ending, I think people walked away and said, you do belong, and you won't wilt under the pressure, and the moment didn't get to you. It wasn't too big for you. And then, of course, Jarrell Miller, and then, of course, Filip Hrgović. And I'm happy in the sense that he beat Hrgović, because if it was Hrgović, AJ, this would still be a big fight, but not as big as this, not England versus England. And so there's a great story to be told there. His relationship with Don Charles has been great. Obviously, that's been a storyline this week as well, which has added to some of the intrigue. But what they've done together has been amazing, and what AJ and Ben Davison and Lee Wiley have done has been amazing. So you have these two great partnerships that are in focus come Saturday as well. So yeah, I love the fact that people are backing him. I love the fact that people are supporting him. But let's be honest, 96,000 on Saturday, I'd say 90%, 95% are rooting for AJ.
If not more, to be honest. Anthony Joshua is a huge draw, and he has kept that over the years, there is no doubt. Going into this fight, obviously it means Anthony Joshua has the opportunity to become three-time heavyweight champion of the world. You would argue that, regardless of the outcome of December the 21st in Tyson Fury and Oleksandr Usyk, that it's probably the most likely we've ever been in terms of seeing that monumental clash of Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury. Does AJ feel pressure?
I was wondering this morning who has more pressure on their shoulders. Is it Anthony Joshua or Daniel Dubois? And you can make a strong case for both. I think ultimately it's on AJ's side of things because of the state of his career where he's at. He's older, obviously. He's done so much. I still think, though, even if he loses this fight, and even if Tyson loses this fight, there's a great chance of this Fury-AJ fight happening in 2025. Now, will it have the same stakes? Will it feel the same? Maybe not. Will it be as big? Maybe not. But I would also argue this. There is a sentiment that this fight is happening 2 or 3 years too late. Well, if Anthony Joshua beats Daniel Dubois on Saturday, and if Tyson Fury beats Oleksandr Usyk on December 21st, I would then argue that it would be the biggest that it ever could have been. AJ would then be on a 5-fight winning streak, and Tyson would be coming off a win over the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter, in my opinion, Oleksandr Usyk. It would be massive. It would be monumental, gigantic, mammoth, like everything. Yeah. So, don't quite subscribe to that narrative that it's too late just yet. And ultimately, because of that, yes, there's more pressure on AJ's shoulders. He's the guy, and he's the one that everything is kind of being built around here. So let's see.
You mentioned Don Charles. Now, everything's been squashed in terms of have they split up and some of the comments that were made earlier in the week. That's all gone as such. But what we do know is it is an illness that Don Charles has had. But the fact of the matter is he's not been around his fighter on fight week. Regardless of the reason, in your eyes, is that detrimental going into Saturday night, regardless of the fact he will be in the corner on Saturday?
Well, that's the thing. Do we know that for sure?
Yeah, he's come out today on TalkSport and said he will be there Saturday in the corner.
Great. If you're dealing with an illness, maybe you're not in the best form, maybe you take a turn. Illnesses are illnesses. So yes, my mother likes to say, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans for the future. So, the worst case scenario.
That's a great line from Mother Helwani.
Thank you. She is the best. She's very wise. Obviously, if the initial rumor was true, and it has been proven to be not, if they split up on fight week, that would have been a disaster. Yeah. Him not being here at the presser stuff and all that doesn't matter. No. They're still talking. They're still in contact, and good for him for staying away from his fighter if he's not feeling well. Hopefully he's in great form come Saturday. He could be in the corner. If he's not in the corner, that's the biggest deal of all. If he's not there to actually speak to his guy, to lead his soldier into battle, that's a gigantic deal. And so we'll have to truly see how this arc plays out come Saturday night. But him not being around on fight week, presser, workout, whatever, to me, that's nothing. They're still talking.
Dana White last night said he's going to come into the boxing space. Now, we saw that last week's monumental UFC event at the Sphere. Obviously had some form of Riyadh season involvement in the fact that they were the sponsor of it. His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh ringside at that event. Dana White's boxing plans. Do we know much? Do you know much? Have you heard much? We know that there's been UFC Fight Pass events and stuff like that, but he's saying that you'll be seeing a lot more of us in the boxing space. What do you make of it?
We'll see. I mean, he has been saying this exact same thing since 2017. He was in Ireland yesterday in Dublin, to be exact, promoting the Callum Walsh fight. He's taken a liking to young Callum Walsh and has been working with Tom Loeffler to promote him, and it's airing on Fight Pass, and I understand it's also going to air on TNT Sports in the UK. So that's great. That's brilliant. He's using those relationships. The UFC has a deal on TNT. It's brilliant. When the Floyd-Conor fight happened, he was walking around with Zuffa boxing shirts. He was selling them. He was saying, I'm coming to fix boxing. I'm coming to save boxing, all this stuff and more. He is a diehard boxing fan and always has been. And while he has been critical of some elements of boxing, he has always shown great love and respect for the sweet science. But he has been saying this since 2017. One of my favorite Twitter accounts, Jedi Goodman, put together a thread today of all the time since 2019. So he missed 2 years prior, where Dana was talking about like coming into boxing. And so you can add this one to the list. There could be a difference though now for two reasons. Number one, UFC owned by Endeavor under the umbrella of TKO with WWE. And I know that there are members of TKO who are huge boxing fans as well, connoisseurs, if you will. Nick Khan in particular, the president of WWE, he entered the agency world by representing Manny Pacquiao and Freddie Roach. He's a Vegas guy, and so I think that there could be something there. Also, Turki Al-Sheikh. Obviously a big boxing guy. They have a great relationship now. He could help this, this venture get off the ground too. I will say this though. I am not doubting that Dana wants to get into boxing. I'm not doubting that it's going to happen finally. Sometimes things take longer, and I'm not doubting that he could be successful in boxing. What I am doubting though, and what I will say won't be successful, is if he tries to use the same business model that he has applied to the UFC to the sport of boxing. I don't think he will, for the record. But if that is the plan, I would say that's a mistake. You cannot do that. It works in the UFC, the business model, the pay structure, because it was set, they set the standard. As you know, boxing is completely different, and you cannot tell fighters what to wear. You cannot be as strong-handed as he is. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And maybe he's dipping his toe in the water with Callum and a couple others. He referred to himself as HBO Sports yesterday at the presser, implying that Fight Pass is a place that can air multiple events. It's an interesting concept. They're obviously not quite there just yet. I would strongly argue that DAZN is HBO Sports in 2024, and I'm not just saying that because I work for them. They are the ones with the deals with the likes of Matchroom and Golden Boy and others. But let's see how it all goes. It's great. Look, I've said it time and again. Combat sports are on fire. Boxing is on fire. MMA is on fire. Pro wrestling is on fire. It's a great time to get involved. And, what I would say is I am here as well. Some people said that I didn't know about boxing. I hope I've proven otherwise. And what I would say to those who want to come to boxing is the water is warm. Join me.
Get involved indeed. Lastly from me, I am a big MMA casual, as we were discussing off the record.
To put it mildly.
To put it, yeah, okay. I mean, how much more, how much more can I, yeah, super casual, that I am, which my friends absolutely hate me for. But I still think there's that little thing between boxing and MMA where I'm like, when I'm in the pub with my friends, I'm almost like team boxing and their team MMA as such.
Silly.
I agree, and that will change. What I have noticed over the last year or so is, one, it's also become very much a meme at the minute of Dana White's love for Jon Jones.
Oh, right.
And this, obviously, we have in Manchester Tom Aspinall, the UFC interim heavyweight champion, I believe, and I think a lot of people think worthy of the actual championship itself. There are plans for Jon Jones, Stipe Miocic too, I believe, and Jon Jones is saying that could be his last ever fight. Are you able to inform me as a casual why we're not seeing, I know Jones by the looks of it doesn't want to fight Tom Aspinall. How do you, what's going on in your head when you see that sort of triangle?
So they tried to make Jon Jones versus Stipe last November. Jon Jones injured his shoulder, then he had to have surgery on it, and then surgery on his elbow. And so they did offer Stipe to fight Tom, who was an interim champion at the time, and who was lesser known, on very short notice. And he said, thanks, but no thanks. So they booked Tom Aspinall against Sergey Pavlovich for the interim belt, November at MSG, and Tom ran right through him and became champion. A lot of people after that said, all right, can we finally see Jones versus Tom, unify the belts? Well, out of his loyalty to Jon, and this is what Dana's saying, I made a promise to both guys, I'm going to make this fight. They stuck with the original plan, which was Stipe versus Jon. There's a precedent, though, for them, changing the plans when new things emerge. So it's not like they have to stick to this plan, but that's what he's doing, and they feel like this is the smart thing to do. I consider Tom Aspinall to be the real heavyweight champion. Jon has one fight at heavyweight. He won that fight fair and square. It was a phenomenal win over Cyril Gane, but he also has only fought once since 2020, that one fight. And so a lot of the talk has been, is he the greatest of all time? Is he the pound for pound GOAT? He is the greatest of all time. There's no doubt about that. If you want to remove anyone who has tested positive for PEDs, he can't be on that list because he did. Yeah. Now, pound for pound, there's no chance that he's #1 pound for pound. There's a massive difference between greatest of all time and current pound for pound king. Gigantic difference. I think most people understand that. I don't understand why there's any confusion here. #1 pound for pound is the best active fighter in the world, regardless of weight class. Jon has only fought once since 2020. That's not an active fighter. And I don't care if he was booked, injured or not. That's part of the equation too when you talk about being an active fighter. So to me, it's Alex Pereira, it's Islam Makhachev. Those are the two options, pound for pound. Now, back to Stipe. He wants to go through with it. November 16th, hopefully we see a resolution. And I don't believe Jon when he says, this is my last fight. I think it's a bit of trolling. I think it's a bit of promotional tactic. I think if he wins that fight, they'll do their very best to make the Tom fight in 2025. And I don't subscribe to the notion that anything Jon does at this point in his career affects his legacy. His resume is set, the body of work is set. But I will say this, if in fact he does walk away from the Tom fight, I do think there'll be a couple of strikes on the legacy. The Francis fight didn't happen because of Jon, in my opinion, and the Tom fight, if that is the case, won't happen because of him. And that would be unfortunate because I think he's the greatest of all time and I don't think he's afraid of anyone. But I do think you reach a point with an undefeated record and you say, okay, let me try to walk away undefeated. And God bless, because there's always going to be another guy. But there's literally, in the UFC, one guy left. That's it. There's not a guy after Tom. There's not a guy that everyone says you must. It's literally just Tom. And so I'd love to see it happen. And if he wins that, then you can literally not say a thing.
Finally, from me, Saturday night, live on DAZN pay-per-view, Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois. England versus England, like you said to me, 96,000 in the National Stadium of Wembley. We're expecting fireworks. Wembley Way is already being constructed into just incredible scenes. There's a pre-fight party at Box Park. Everything's incredible. What is your final prediction? Down the lens if you can.
Okay. Well, what a scene, what a venue. I've never been to Wembley Stadium. Our hotel's nearby, so I was able to look at it and marvel at it. Of course, one of the most iconic venues in the world, in my opinion, in sports. And I know they renovated it, but to me, Wembley is Wembley. I think of 1992. I think of SummerSlam, Bret Hart versus Dave Boy Smith. You know about 1992 SummerSlam. Look it up. I think of some of the great fights there. Obviously, Klitschko, Joshua Povetkin. I think of some of the great moments in all kinds of sport. But most importantly, by the way, I think of the championship final back in 2022, of course, Nottingham Forest defeating Huddersfield Town to make it back to the Premier League after 23 years. You remember that, right? What a time it was. What a time it was. And so I can't wait to be there on Saturday to witness it all with my friends, Ariel Helwani, Kate Abdo, Todd Grisham, Mike Costello, Darren Barker, Barry Jones, Joseph Parker as well. I think I just named the entire roster. Kudos to me, Emily Austin, and Ali Drew. How about that? In any event, I think Anthony Joshua wins. I think he wins via TKO somewhere in the 6th to 8th round.
Ariel Helwani, as always, you are an absolute gentleman. Thank you very much for your time on the Stomping Ground this afternoon.